first time for insurers to discriminate against folks who had a pre-existing condition. And by the way, for the young people here, you may not think about pre-existing conditions, but when you get to be 57, because insurance companies, they could categorize all kinds of things as pre-existing conditions. If you had asthma, you might not get insurance, or it'd be really expensive. If you had cancer, they might not give you insurance. Just being a woman was considered a pre-existing condition because they would charge women more than men for insurance, which, when you think about it, makes absolutely no sense, because the condition women have is the power to give birth to us. And it seems to me you wouldn't want to charge somebody more for bringing us into the world. That's just my opinion. So we put in a law that said, no, you got to charge women the same as men. You can't discriminate based on pre-existing conditions. And okay, that's great. So, and by the way, on that vote, not a single Republican joined us. Not one. Zero. Nada. Zilch. None. Goose egg. None. None of them supported us. Now suddenly it's election season, and what happens? You've got Republicans out there saying, oh, well, we will protect pre-existing conditions. Trust us. Let's look at the record. Andrew's opponent was in Congress and voted to sabotage or repeal the ACA and protections for people with pre-existing conditions every chance he got. Bill's opponent, Rick Scott, don't boo, vote. So Bill's opponent is literally suing the government to overturn pre-existing protections as we speak. When I was president, Republicans voted more than a dozen times to get rid of protections for people with pre-existing conditions. Last year, they fell one vote short. One vote. If they win this Tuesday, they'll finally succeed. If they keep control of Congress, you better believe they're coming after your health care. Florida, we can't let Rick Scott become the deciding vote that guts your pre-existing conditions protections. In all of his time in office, Rick Scott could have expanded Medicaid and covered 800,000 more Floridians with health care. 800,000. Those are families. Rick DeSantis wouldn't even try. So if you want change, Andrew Gillum will expand Medicaid coverage. If you vote for him and you vote for a Democratic state legislature to help him, your vote could give 800,000 Floridians just like that the security of health care coverage. Democrats aren't going to let Republicans gut your pre-existing conditions protections. Democrats aren't going to let Republicans gut your Medicare to pay for their tax cuts. They're going to protect your care, period. But here's the main point I want to make, Florida. If Republicans thought their tax cut for billionaires was popular, they'd be campaigning on it, right? You don't hear a peep out of them. This was their main legislative accomplishment in Congress. They have not mentioned it in a single ad. If Republicans thought their endless votes to sabotage or take away your health care was popular, that's what they'd be campaigning on. You don't hear a peep from them about that. In fact, right at election time, suddenly Republicans are saying they're going to protect your pre-existing conditions when they've literally been doing the opposite. That's some kind of gall. That's some kind of chutzpah. Let's call it what it is. It's a lie. They're lying to you. A former Republican Congressman, David Jolly, just cast his vote. He voted for Andrew Gillum. He said, the reason's simple, is because I've served with Ron DeSantis. That should tell you something. Let me tell you, if somebody who had served with me in my party voted for the other guy, I'd feel bad. I don't imagine Congressman Jolly and Mayor Gillum agree on a lot, but maybe they, just like all of us, agree that there's some things bigger than politics. And that's on the ballot right now. What kind of politics do we want? Do we want a politics where people are yelling at each other and making lewd gestures in front of the children? Can't do that in front of mamas. Look, throughout human history, politicians have made promises that turned out to be harder than they expected, and so they pump up the good things that they did. They downplay the stuff that didn't work out. They try to put a positive. We're okay. They try to put a positive spin on things. It's not just politicians, by the way, that do that. Y'all do that too. You know, sometimes, Andrew, maybe this doesn't happen with you and your wife, but sometimes I'm at home and I'm doing the dishes. I say, hey, hon, look, I did the dishes. Michelle says, that's the first time in a month you've done dishes. Don't brag about it. I'm putting a positive spin on things. Then she asked me, what'd you do wrong? Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing the dishes. We all try to put a positive spin on things. But what we have not seen the way we're seeing right now is politicians just blatantly, repeatedly, boldly, shamelessly lying, just making stuff up. That's what they're doing right now all the time. And by the way, it's not the first time. They do this every election cycle. Try to terrify folks. And then the election comes and problem suddenly magically vanishes. You never hear about it again. In 2010, they said that Bill and we were setting up death panels to kill your grandma. Remember that? In 2014, they said, Ebola's going to kill all of us. Shut the borders. In 2016, it was Hillary's emails. They were all wound up about that. And the mainstream press picked up on it. This is terrible. This is a breach of security. You know they don't care about that, because if they did, they'd be worrying about the current president talking on his cell phone while the Chinese are listening in. They didn't care about it. They said it to get folks angry and ginned up. Now in 2018, they're telling you the existential threat to America is a bunch of poor refugees 1,000 miles away. They're even taking our brave troops away from their families for a political stunt at the border. And the men and women of our military deserve better than that. So there's just constant fear-mongering to distract from the record. Now the administration suddenly says, we're doubling down on an outdated Cuba policy, which all that does is hurt families and entrepreneurs who are trying to open up the Cuban economy. We need to get back to policies that support the Cuban people make their lives better. That's change. That's what Bill believes in. That's what Andrew believes in. The point is, Florida, they make stuff up, but here's also the problem is too often we fall for it. Too often we fall for the distraction. You know, y'all remember Peanuts, right? Maybe some of you too young. Charlie Brown and Lucy with the football. And she'd say, go ahead, I'm holding it, you can kick it. And Charlie Brown would say, okay, and then she'd pull the ball away and he'd fall on his back. But he kept on doing it every time. Don't be Charlie Brown. Don't fall for the okey doke. Don't be bamboozled. Don't be hoodwinked. Because when you get distracted, while you're distracted with all this stuff they're making up, they're also robbing you blind. They'll be like, look over there. And then they're giving tax cuts to billionaires. Look over there. Then they're letting polluters poison your air and water. They will absolutely take health care away from millions the first chance they get while you are distracted with stuff that is not true. It's like the con where a door-to-door salesman says you need a security system while his buddy sneaks in the back and steals your stuff. But it's not just the practical effect in terms of policy. When words stop meaning anything, when truth doesn't matter, when people can just lie with abandon, democracy can't work. In our own lives, in our marriages, in our families, if consistently the people we're dealing with can't believe what we say, if our children see that it doesn't matter that you actually accomplish things, all you do is just make stuff up whenever it's expedient, society doesn't work. Democracy does not work. And that's what's happening at the highest levels. And the only check on that behavior is you. The only check on that behavior is you and your vote. And on Tuesday, you can vote for a politics that's decent and honest and lawful and tries to do right by people. If you're a Democrat, you better be voting for Andrew Gillum and Bill Nelson and the whole ticket. If you're not a Democrat, you should still be voting for them. Because it shouldn't be Democratic or Republican to say we don't just lie with impunity. It shouldn't be Democratic or Republican to say we don't just punish our political opponents trying to use a justice system, that we don't threaten the freedom of the press because they say something we don't like. It shouldn't be Democratic or Republican to say we're not going to target certain groups based on what they look like or how they pray. It shouldn't be Democrat or Republican to know that climate change is real and threatens our futures and our kids' futures. And Florida is going to see some of the worst effects of climate change unless we change course right now. I know Republicans may think that government should only perform a few functions, but one of those functions should be taking care of folks after a hurricane in Puerto Rico. I know there are conservatives who think we should be fiscally prudent. Well, there's nothing fiscally responsible about trillion-dollar deficits. I know there are sincere conservatives who are compassionate and must think there's nothing compassionate about ripping immigrant children from the arms of mothers at the border. I'm assuming that they recognize that a president doesn't get to decide on his own who's an American citizen and who's not. That's not how the Constitution of the United States works. That's not how the Bill of Rights works. That's not how our democracy works. People who think it's wrong to spend 8 years trying to take away people's health care and then spend the final days pretending you're Mother Teresa, that you're Florence Nightingale. People who, I'm assuming people must get upset when they see folks who spend all their time vilifying others, questioning their patriotism, calling them enemies of the people, and then suddenly pretending they're concerned about civility. And we don't need more mealy-mouthed elected officials who say, oh, well, I'm very concerned, or I'm terribly vexed by this bad behavior, but there's nothing I can do about it. We need leaders who will actually stand up for what's right, regardless of party. Leaders who represent the best of the American spirit, like Andrew Gillum and Bill Nelson. Patriots will stand up for anyone whose fundamental rights are at stake. Our neighbor's health care, somebody else's kids getting bullied. Will stand up if they see their gay friend getting harassed. Will stand up for the God-given freedom to worship without fear. That's what all of us need to stand up for, with clarity and patriotism and purpose, the values that bind us to our fellow citizens, no matter who we are, no matter what we look like. That's what Americans do. That's what America is. That's what Andrew Gillum believes. That's what Bill Nelson believes. That's what you believe. A better vision of America. And that's where I'm hopeful, Florida. I'm hopeful that we will cut through the lies, block out the noise, and remember who we are and who we are called to be. I'm hopeful that out of this political darkness, I see a great awakening of citizenship all across the country. I can't tell you how encouraged I've been to see so many people getting involved for the first time, or the first time in a very long time, marching and organizing and registering people to vote. These incredible, inspiring Parkland students, I don't usually wear bracelets. I saw some of the families backstage trying to transform unspeakable grief into a better world. Young veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan. Record numbers of women who are running for office. You know we need more women. It's a movement of citizens who maybe never had much interest in politics, but they said, oh, this time it's different. This time it's too important to sit out. They're lacing up those marching shoes. They're grabbing a clipboard because they believe in an America that's better, that's kinder, that looks out for one another. The antidote to government by the powerful few is government by the organized, energized many. The antidote to a politics based on division is a politics based on a sense that we're in it together. That's what this moment's about. And I have to tell you, Florida, one election won't fix everything. You know, sometimes I hear young people especially saying, oh, well, you know, I don't know, all politicians are the same, nothing changes, everything. You know what? It's true that one election is not suddenly going to eliminate poverty in this country. One election won't eliminate racism or sexism or homophobia. One election will not suddenly give everybody health care all at once or ensure that every child in Florida gets the kind of education they deserve. It's not going to happen just in one election, but it'll be a start. It'll be a start. It'll make things better. And when you start down that path of making things better, momentum starts to build. And then it gets even better. And it gets even better. So don't just sit back. If you don't like what's going on right now, don't just complain. Don't get anxious and freaked out. Don't throw up your hands in despair. Don't boo. Don't hashtag. Vote. When you vote for an attorney general and state reps, they will have the power to protect our voting rights and make sure our criminal justice system treats everybody fairly. When you vote, you have the power to make sure we strengthen laws that protect women in the workplace from harassment and discrimination, and make sure they're paid the same as men for doing the same job. When you vote, you have the power to make it easier for a college student to afford college and harder for a disturbed person to shoot up places where our kids learn and where our seniors gather to worship. When you vote, you have the power to make sure a family keeps its health insurance. You could save somebody's life. That power rests in your hands. And if you get involved, if you knock on some doors, if you talk with some of your slightly trifling friends, you get some souls to the polls. If you turn out on Tuesday to vote for this whole incredible Florida ticket, I promise you something powerful happens. Change starts to happen. Hope starts to happen. And with each new step we take in the direction of fairness and justice, equality and opportunity, that hope spreads. It starts rippling. It enters into each of us. We get a sense of what is possible. And we remind ourselves of those better angels of our nature. It's up to you. Let's make history happen right here in Florida. Let's get to work. Let's go vote. God bless you, Miami. God bless you, Florida. God bless the United States of America.